We live in a time where masculinity is shamed and men don't know what it means to be a man. As a pastor and counselor, I've spent the better part of my life equipping and training others. My goal with this show is to translate my hard-earned experience into tools and tactics to help you become stronger as a man. This is the BraveCo podcast. I'm your host, Jason Vellet. Welcome back to the BraveCo podcast. This week, BraveCo men, I have such a cool guest. His name's Michael McIntyre, and man, Michael is he's such a great man. He's a businessman, a successful businessman. He's built a $3 billion agency from scratch, recruited over 20,000 sales agents. Sounds like I'm reading my bio. No, I'm just kidding. He's done everything from building businesses to running record labels and just all kinds of stuff. And so, working with the Dallas Cowboys, you were a senior pastor for a long time. So you've done it all. And Michael, it's a blessing to have you on here, man. I love having guys on here that have a lot of experience, and especially a lot of experience in a bunch of different areas. And so thanks so much for coming on.
Hey, Jason, thank you so much for the invite. And I love what you're doing here at BraveCo, and it's really awesome. Thank you.
Man, can we just talk a little bit about your early years? How did you get into business? And I really want to dive into how you built your business and from the ground up and kind of dive into that a little bit. But take us through how you became an entrepreneur and where you started in business.
Yeah, and I really started being an entrepreneur at a really, really young age. I mean, I remember running a paper route and then shoveling snow. I'm from Michigan originally. I grew up there. I left there, but I did a lot of odd jobs when I was there. I was always wanting more. Grew up in a divorced family. My father had a hard time paying child support, so there was 5 of us, and so we always lacked a little bit. We weren't broke, but we didn't have nice things. And so I always wanted more. And so I'd get odd jobs and work at a body shop and clean up. And back, I remember I was, 9, 10 years old doing these things and making extra money. So I always had that burning desire to do that. And then
that was back in the year where kids were allowed to hustle, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Back when your mom would open up the door and say, go pester the neighbors the rest of the night, and not see you till the next morning. That's exactly
my dad
right.
Always tells me how he had a job from 10 years old on, like he was working full time at 12. And, right. And I'm like, Dad, you get in trouble for that now, right? Like you can't actually send your kids to work a real job when they're that old. But yeah, that's awesome. Sorry to interrupt you, but those were the years.
It's 100% true. And, at some point I realized that I really needed to get a college education. And so, there was nobody there to pay for I didn't have a scholarship. I wasn't like a 4.0 student. I was an average C- student. And so, I thought, well, I might join the United States Air Force. And so I did. I went in the Air Force for 4 years and was in Strategic Air Command stationed with the Titan II missile silos in Arkansas. And I went to college full time while I was in the Air Force, Jason, and earned my degree. And I did some odd jobs. I did some hustle things while I was in the Air Force, some side hustles. And I just had that burning desire to have, more. And I was really money driven, to be honest with you. And I wasn't an atheist or a Satanist by any stretch, but I wasn't a true blue Christian either. I grew up in the Catholic Church, and I really didn't want anything to do with all that. But I got out of the Air Force and I got into sales and I got into the insurance business. And it was just a natural thing for me with my work ethic and the ability to show up and be seen. I did really well in that. And then I decided to start my own company. And in 1992, that's what we did. And my wife and I started the company, and we grew up from 0 to $3 billion in sales. And one of the things that we did was make sure that everybody made money. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And, it's important, especially, and we would always help the people that were, I call them we were like the land of the misfit toys, so to speak. And so a lot of salespeople would come to us because we provided leads, we provided appointments, and we provided a way for them to make, a couple $100,000 a year. And we recruited a lot of people. And so that was our driving force, is to help people get where they wanted to go. In the meantime, we ended up doing really well ourselves. But and so we developed different things. We created what I call nowadays, and back then they didn't have this terminology. It was called a blue ocean business, to where we kind of forged our own way. We kind of reinvented the whole insurance industry in that, and it became very successful.
What does that mean? A blue ocean?
Yeah.
I'm not like a major entrepreneur guy, so you'll have to break it down for me.
It. You're a hunting guy, man. I like that.
Yeah, dude.
I like that a lot.
I'm just a guy.
And you gotta let me know. But yeah, so you got red ocean and blue ocean. So for those entrepreneurs out there that are listening to this is really, really, it's good stuff. So in a red ocean, just imagine if you got a big swimming pool or a big pond, Jason, in your backyard or whatever, and it's a good sized pond, and you take a huge piece of raw meat, big, huge 100-pound piece of raw meat, throw it in the middle, and also throw about 500 sharks into that small pond in the backyard. And they're all going to hit that meat, man. They're going to go after it, and they're going to hurt each other. Some of them are going to get killed. Some are going to make it. Some are going to get bitten, but they're all going after it. And it creates a huge red ocean full of blood, right? And so not everybody gets what they want. And a lot of people get injured and hurt. A lot of the sharks get injured and hurt. Well, if it's a blue ocean, same pond, same piece of meat, but one shark. And that shark gets to eat whenever they want to eat, because there's no competition. And so the water stays blue. And so it's a blue ocean economy. It's a blue ocean business. Just to give you a couple examples about that in our modern times here, if you look at Southwest Airlines is out of Dallas, right? And in 1973, this guy named Herb Kelleher started this airlines here in Dallas. He said, listen, let's put some really good-looking flight attendants, they called them stewardesses back then, on this airplane, fly people down to Dallas or down to Houston or Austin for $20. And nobody's ever done that before. And so they created a blue ocean. And over the next 35 years, Southwest Airlines, up until when COVID hit, had every quarter they made money, and people got very wealthy just off of their stock. And so they had a blue ocean deal. The other one you could look at would be a red ocean environment, would be Pepsi-Cola and Coca-Cola, right? They're constantly fighting over that same customer. McDonald's and Burger King's a red ocean, constantly fighting. The margins are muy poquito. They're very small, and people, they have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on ads. But a blue ocean example would be back in 1984. These guys came over from France, and they went to New York City and watched a Broadway show, and they were enthralled with it. It was the first time ever to New York. And these guys had a circus back in France, and they said, let's bring the circus here to the United States, but let's put it into a Broadway atmosphere. And they created this thing called Cirque du Soleil. For the next 20 years, they made more money in that Cirque du Soleil than all of the circuses combined since the beginning of modern time, because nobody else had did it. Then all of a sudden other people come in, but they created a blue ocean. So that's what we did in the insurance business. We created a blue ocean environment, and I believe that's one of the reasons why we are very successful.
So, gosh, that makes a lot of sense. Like, basically you're finding the niche, or you're finding a place where there is really no other competition, or very, 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 very little competition in filling that spot. That's interesting.
Yeah. And then just like with Southwest Airlines, a lot of other, Spirit Airlines and JetBlue and some others have come and gone, but they're still not as successful as Southwest Airlines. Same way with Cirque du Soleil, same way with other things that people are done. If you look at, look what Elon Musk did with Tesla, right? He created a blue ocean with Tesla, because nobody else had really done it correctly until he did. Now there's other people coming in. Some are making it, some aren't making it. But if you look at Ford, General Motors, and these other companies, those are red ocean. So that's why Elon Musk became the richest man in the world, because he created his own blue ocean.
That's really interesting. What was your niche then in real estate, or sorry, in
insurance?
Insurance, yeah.
Yeah, our niche was, we had a massive direct mailing campaign. We spent about $8 million a year just on postage and for direct mail campaigns. And then we set people's appointments. We actually put people in the house 3 times a day, sometimes 4 times a day, 5 days a week. And we also brought in an estate planning attorneys all around the country and fed them business. And because the laws had changed back in the late 80s to where you could start advertising if you were an attorney. Before that, you couldn't do it. But the Supreme Court ruled that attorneys could start advertising. So, and for the most part, most attorneys, not all, most attorneys aren't the greatest salespeople, right? And so, I always say that most attorneys couldn't hit water jumping out of a boat. And so what we did is we found these solopreneur attorneys and said, hey, we'll build your business if you take care of you take care of our clients. We'll send you clients. And we did. We made them wealthy, and it was never done before. And yeah, so we had estate planning attorneys. We were bringing them business, and it didn't cost them anything. It was like manna from heaven for them. And then we would also do the insurance on the back end on that for those clients. And so it was a true blue ocean that we created.
Wow, that's incredible. Why did you get out of it?
I sold the company in 2007. A combination of burnout, combination of giving my life to Jesus, combination of tired of it was a lot of work. I mean, we had a huge company. We were officed in 40 states. And it was just at a point in my life, it was like, because you've got issues. I mean, like anybody, no matter what kind of money you have or no what kind of business you have, you're always going to have issues. And it was like, the issues got to where like, man, this is not as fun as it used to be. And so I saw an exit strategy and I took it. At the same time, I gave my life to Jesus, which is a radical shift for me. And then I started doing other things. And so now we're out here doing some ministry, some business, some entertainment, and creating some crazy stuff in his kingdom.
What, if you don't mind me asking, what was the issue that you were facing back then that was driving the like, man, I just don't want to do this anymore?
Probably regulation. The regulation had changed because insurance business is highly regulated, and I get why. Because there's some bad actors in there, but the regulations kept getting different, and the commission levels were dropping to where it was just almost not profitable to keep doing it at our scale. Now, if you were, MetLife or New York Life and, $500 billion company, it might have been different, but we were, we did good, but we were still a small fish in a huge pond. And so I just saw the possibility of taking some money off the table and also going into doing some other things that I wanted to do. I wanted to do consulting. I wrote a couple books, and I really enjoyed that freedom. But it was a hard transition, though, Jason. I want you to know. I mean, because I was going, we were going 100 miles an hour, and you come to, drop it down to, first gear and pop the clutch down to 4 miles per hour. It took me a minute to get used to that.
Well, it's worth talking about because, I mean, every guy goes through different transitions in his life. And I can give a really good example. Like, when 2007, I, went through a divorce, which I've talked about on this podcast a ton. So, my wife had an affair. She ended up leaving. So I became a single dad, raising 3 kids, mostly by myself for a while, for those 3 years. And then, I met my wife, Lauren, and we dated for a while, whatever, got married. And of course, that was a big transition, right? I went from being married to being single, massive transition. Probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, being a single parent, right? It's just like impossible, so hard. For all those single parents out there, I just like, my heart goes out so much. Because it really is an impossible task. There's not enough time in the day to do both, to work, to, give the kids the attention, all that stuff. And then transitioning back into, okay, I'm married again in the family, and my wife and I feel like I've lived 3 lives, which most people probably do by the time they die, 3 or 4 lives, right? Like, got remarried again, and we raised our older kids. So my oldest right now is 24, and he's married, and I've got a 22-year-old daughter, and then a 20-year-old son, and then we have a 2-year-old son and a 4-year-old daughter. And so I started over again, right? And so, yeah. So in my years of when I was divorced and a single dad, it was like full bore grind, like so much grinding and so hard, as you can imagine. Getting remarried was super exciting. And then, raising the kids you're still in the grind, which the grind isn't bad. It's like, it's just like, it's full on. And then I had this period of like 4 or 5 years when the kids were older. And it was kind of like, I'm in a new season, right? I can go fishing when I want to. I can go hunting when I want to. The kids are old enough. I don't hardly see them because they're playing with their friends and they can drive themselves and all that stuff. And, but then I'm back to babies again, and, and building BraveCo, building a business, which it's a nonprofit, but it's still a business, right? You're in a ministry and all that stuff. It really was like, oh, whiplash. Oh my gosh. I'm back in this spot where now I'm doing something. I'm in a completely different mode, both at home and at work, than I've been in a really long time. And I'm having to make some big adjustments. Like, what were some of the adjustments that you had to make, and what was that like for you? In like, what are the mistakes that guys make in there?
Yeah, it's a great question. And thank you for sharing that about your transitions. And one of the things I know for sure though, Jason, everybody goes through different things, right? And, one of the things that I always, when I'm coaching somebody or talking to somebody, is to get into the comparison deal, right? Because if you start to compare your stuff to somebody else's stuff, man, it's like, oh my God, and I always taught our children, we've got 3 daughters, and we're a little ahead of you. They're 33 or 30, 33, 34, 32, and 25. And 3 grandchildren. And so, so my, the comparison is try not to compare yourself to anybody else, which is almost impossible sometimes, but you got to lay it at his feet. But the transition, what you're talking about, and how do you go through those things, and what kind of things do you do? And listen, none of it's easy. It's just not. When I sold the company,
can I interrupt you? I want you to talk about when you sold the company, but why do you think that we compare so much?
Insecurities. And I think what happens, first of all, you've got, you got social media, which is really good, and it's also really evil, right? It's like everything else on this planet, right? And that's just the way it is. I think what happens is we're always looking. That's why people like to see, America likes the underdog, so to speak, or people like to watch soap operas, or see, Honey Boo Boo, and see these things that are real bad, and it makes them feel better because their life doesn't suck like that life, right? Yeah. And so I think, and then all of a sudden, if we, then all of a sudden we start idol worshiping, movie stars or people, which is not right, which God doesn't appreciate that, and we put that in, then we're never gonna. It's kind of like the spirit of mammon. We never get there. And listen, mammon had a hold of me, bro, for a long time, and okay, so you make all this money, you buy a jet, you do this, you do that, then all of a sudden 60 days later, then boom, the goalpost is moved, and I got to do more, and then all of a sudden it's never enough, right? And so that was one of the big things when I gave my life to Jesus, when I came into this kingdom. Once I drank from His well, I was never thirsty again. Didn't mean I didn't want to make money. Didn't mean I want to do things and have nice things, but it's just it didn't define me anymore, and so. The comparison spirit is alive and well, man, especially with social media. And you got to really check yourself in that stuff. There's some people that I don't follow because I can't do it. I don't want to. I might know something about that person or that celebrity or that guru or whatever. And I just like, I don't need my mind with that stuff. And so, Paul always talks about, capture all thoughts, right? And so I don't want anything except good thoughts coming through. And you know, Pew Research came out with a deal that said 87% of our thoughts are negative self-talk,
Yeah.
right? And so, you know, and those that are listening to this, some of you know this, and we still feed our minds with this stuff. And so the comparison's about insecurity. It's about trying to, you know, one up somebody or keep up with the Joneses. And there's just no there. There just isn't. And so in transition periods, that's when we're the weakness, right?
Yeah.
Or the weakness, because why? Because it's the unknown, right? What I don't know. And it's like with Wall Street, you know, I'm a business guy. And so if I know how much money I'm going to lose or what the number is going to be in the first quarter, third quarter, whatever it is, or what it's going to cost, what the cost per sale is going to be, I can deal with that. Okay. All right. I can adjust, adapt, modify, overcome. But if I don't know what the number is, oh my gosh, you know, it's like, I can't sleep at night. I'm staring at the ceiling. I'm trying to, and then all of a sudden we start making up 10,000 things that don't make sense. And so that transition period, you got to get grounded. You got to keep your eye on the prize. You got to say, okay, what's real and what's not real.
Can I just say, like, man, I feel like you've really just uncovered something, and not just the insecurity piece, because I would have said, like, yeah, we compare when we feel insecure. And which is a massive revelation for a lot of people. And I think we all should be honest enough to go, man, that tendency to compare is always there. It's something that you have to manage. Right. And I see it like my sexual appetite, like it's always there. It's something that I have to manage. It's inside of us. And I can't fear it, but I have to be responsible with it. And so I do the same thing, right? I catch myself like, either judging this person. That's how it would come out for me. Like I'm judging that person and going like, oh, he got his success because, and really it's not a commentary on them. It's a commentary on me. 100%. Or I'm looking at somebody else going, why can't I get there? Why don't I have that? You know, how do I get what they have? And again, it's back to a commentary on me. But when you were talking about the unknown, I really think that's a big key, because it's not just, and I think it's a big key for men, because I was listening to Jordan Peterson talk a while ago, and he was talking about when he was talking about the anxiety that we live in when you don't actually have a target or a goal that you're really aiming at, because he said, it's like you're wandering in the desert, right? And you just got dropped in there. And he said, the problem isn't what you do or don't have. The problem's not that you don't have water, or not that you don't have food, or the problem is that you actually don't know the direction. You don't know where you're going, which creates this incredible amount of insecurity, because we get so much security from predictability, and which, by the way, that's not a bad thing, right? Like that is born and built into us. We have to survive. And part of your basic needs as a human being is certainty. We need a large level of certainty. Every day I wake up, and it's my routine that honestly helps me manage my emotions and my expectations and regulate my life. But that I just want to highlight this, because I think without really paying attention and thinking about it, a lot of men get stuck in this place where they're doing the comparison game, and they try to just, okay, I'm not going to look at that person anymore. I'm going to steward this area of my life. But the root issue is I actually don't know where I'm going. I don't actually know what my next step is. I don't have this real target that I'm aiming at. And so I'm in the middle of a transition, but if I don't have a clear target and a clear goal and a clear plan and and here's the thing. Bit, because it isn't like I fully have this all figured out, or I don't.
Nobody does, Jason.
You have to have something, and I think I just want to highlight for men, like I think so many men are struggling with the comparison right now, not just because they didn't have a dad that says you have what it takes, or another man that poured some confidence into them, but simply because they don't know where they're going. they don't have a vision that they're chasing after. Like, talk into that a little bit, especially from the lens of, okay, you had to make and I know I cut you off earlier. You're starting to talk about the business that you went from, like take it from there a little bit.
Yeah, no, it's good. I think it's very observant, and ambiguity is not of him. Okay. It's just not. Okay. And that's where you get double-mindedness, right? And that's what puts you in anxiety. Double-mindedness, when you're in double-mindedness and ambiguity, it's hell on earth, and it's hell in real time. And you're never going to really be happy until you figure out, where is my true north? Where is the plumb line? Okay. Now, some people you hear constantly, keep your eye on Jesus, right? The analogy, Peter took his eye off, and he said, we all get that. But let's put it into, practicality, pragmatic views here in real life, things that are going on in us, because we're not going to, I don't think anybody's going to step out of the boat in the ocean in a storm and expect to walk, right? And so it'd be cool, but it's just, all likelihood it wouldn't happen. So we've got to stay with, we are operating in gravity. I'm into the spiritual. I love the swirl, but we're also in gravity. We have to deal with gravity on a day-to-day basis, right? So you got to find your true north. You got to find your plumb line. And what happens in those transition periods, it could be maybe you're filing bankruptcy. Maybe you're getting divorced. Maybe you're tempted and had an affair, and you need to deal with that, or you're overspent, or, whatever. Maybe one of your children got hooked on drugs. Whatever the situation is, in that transition period, you still got to find that true north. And that's when, as having a good father, having a good spiritual leader, having somebody that's going to come in and not just empathize with you, because empathy is good, but it doesn't get the job done. Okay. Yeah. What gets the job done is when you have empathy and you bring in action, right? Mm-hmm. That's called compassion. And so, if you're out hiking somewhere in the wilderness, and all of a sudden you come around a corner and you see somebody that is laying down and they have a big boulder on their chest because of a landslide, you have empathy because they're having a hard time breathing and they might die. You empathize with that person. But if you just walk by and say, hey, man, you got all my empathy, that doesn't do squat for that person. But if you go over there and lift that boulder off their chest, and they get to live and breathe. So that's action. So when you do that, it's compassionate. And as men and brothers in Christ, it's really important to open up a safe place where people can tell what's going on and not be judged in that, because 97.9% of us men all have the same issues. We just do, because in 1996, they did the genome thing and broke down DNA, and it's just a small percentage that makes us unique and different and one of a kind, which is great. So that's why, when you look at a picture of a beautiful white sand beach with blue water and coconuts and palm trees, everybody goes, that looks great. Right? Because we all feel that, we see that. And so we have, I don't care how much money you got. I don't care what age you are. I don't care what's going on. We all have these same insecurities and issues. And it's just what separates the wheat from the chaff, Jason, is the ones that have a plumb line and say, okay, all right, I know that I'm going through this season. I know that the money's not where I want it to be. I know my relationship with my wife, my pastor, my children, whatever it is, I need to seek wisdom in this. Okay. Iron sharpens iron. The enemy will separate us men faster than Women have a natural tendency to gather. Men have a natural tendency to divide. And so we've got to seek that wisdom. We've got to seek that community, and to get through that and get our plumb line readjusted, and let somebody speak truth over us and tell us, here's where you're at. Because we're all transitioning. Some of us slow motion, some of us very fast. And so you need that community. And that's why, you have, I'm going up to South Dakota next month for a men's deal. They asked me to come up and speak, and, and it's going to be cold in South Dakota next month. But I know that I'm honored that they're asking me to do that. And so I want to come in there and pour into those men, because look, even when we do have a father in the house, even when we do have that, we still need other people to come in and help us in those situations, because, the unknown, for lack of a better word, sucks. It just does. Yeah. And we need that true north and that guidance.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's such great advice. I was was thinking 2 days ago, I woke up and I just felt really down. And I started to think through like, man, why do I feel so down? Why do I feel so, just like blah. And I started to realize like, I haven't set a target on anything, that I really need to accomplish. And it's just funny how driven we are to hit the mark and hit a target. And it's not that I don't have anything good going, because there's lots of things that are good. But for instance, like I have a men's retreat, fly fishing retreat in January, May. And the retreat, I'd sold it out in a couple of days, and it's awesome. I have that to look forward to, but that's no longer a target. And my wife and I just did a marriage retreat, and that was awesome. We had 60 couples in our marriage retreat. We did 6 weeks, but that's done, right? We just finished that. And I started to realize like, if I don't frequently revisit my targets and my goals, I can, even in my own life, I mean, I've got my kids to think of, I've got my wife to think of, I got BraveCo to think of, but that's not the same thing as having targets and goals and executing on a vision. It's so easy for me to put my life on autopilot and wake up every day and do the same thing every day, which is faithfulness. And I love faithfulness, but it just really does speak to continuing to build out and pursue and push, as opposed to camp out in a spot. Because it's easy. It's funny. Like it's super easy for me to get, okay, I'm going to say two things. Mm-hmm. It's easy for me to desire slowing down and stopping. Like, oh man, I'm pushing so hard. Gosh, I wish things were so much easier. If I had more money in the bank, I could just do whatever I want to, right? Like those are common thoughts that go through my head. Just being like super honest. And yeah. And then when I live that lifestyle, when I coast, I wake up going, gosh, what is life even about? Like, what am I doing? Why am I doing that? And then it's back to like, I say this a lot, like the guy who can suffer the longest in delayed gratification is ultimately the guy that we all really envy. Because what that looks like is a guy who's willing to suffer a lot is a guy who's going to the gym 5 days a week. He's not eating, ice cream at 12 o'clock at night. He's learning healthy communication, right? So when we're able to delay gratification, but you have to have a whole bunch of vision and continually to move that target, because every time you plateau, like every time you get to the last spot that you're trying to hit, the tendency is to stop. The tendency is to like, I get this breakthrough, or I get this thing, and like, man, I'm tired. I want to coast. I want to be done. But then it's so unsatisfying there. And
True.
It's not
so true.
It's not unsatisfying because I'm greedy. It's unsatisfying because, well, I think it's like that verse that talks about we're God's craftsmanship we're God's like workmanship put on this earth to do good works. And it's built inside of us to continue to drive and make a difference. And I just think, man, it's so easy for me to even get in that spot where I just want to coast. And then when I do that to myself, I don't like my environment, right? Like I'm not happy inside my world.
Yeah. I love your honesty on that, Jason. And it's so true. Listen, and one of the things that I learned, it took me a long time to learn this, is don't be addicted to the goal, be addicted to the journey. And
yeah, it's good.
And because what happens is we get addictive to the wins, right? I've talked to a lot of people that, gone to the Super Bowl and they played in the Super Bowl and they won the Super Bowl ring. And it's like, okay, is that all there is? Right. You're 28 years old and you hit your pinnacle, and that's, and these, athletes that are, amazingly gifted, talented athletes, they retired at 35. I remember John Elway, retired, cried his eyes out for a 6-hour news deal. And I love John Elway. Right. But is that all there is? And so what happens is they get to this pinnacle and, and then all of a sudden that's it, so you've got to be careful not to be an achievement junkie, but be a journey junkie. like you talked about, the grind is good. It is good,
Yeah.
Jason. And we need that grind. And listen, God created this place to have rigor. We need rigor in our life, right? That means we get up in the morning and we go to bed at night, right? The
Yeah.
sun comes up, the sun goes down. Sometimes not so much in certain areas, but you still have seasons change, right?
Yep.
And you have, God put all that there for a reason, because it was always the same. If the sun shined the same 24 hours a day, we'd go crazy. So God put this rigor in us, and you got low tides, you got high tides, you got these things in that He put in there. That we got a full moon, we got a half moon, we got a quarter moon, we got no moon. These are things to keep us from going into the booby hatch. I mean, it really is, and we need, and that's basic, but that's how our the Almighty made this planet and this universe to be, because we need that true north. We need that plumb line. And so what happens, though, as achievers, as you've done, and many men are out there, because listen, we want to be, we want to be successful. We want to have this. We want to, have the car and this and the house and the job and the money, or whatever it is that does, melts our butter. And so, but once you hit that, I can't tell you how many millionaires that I've talked to before and coached. They said, man, I thought I was going to be the happiest when I hit my first million. Doesn't work that way, man. It just doesn't. And there's good reason. So you're never going to be happy, especially if you make that first million or that first 100,000 or that first whatever, you're idle. And that's why, as believers, we got to check our spirit and say, okay, I know I've coached some pastors out there that, I want to get to 1,000 people in the church, and then life's going to be great, right? It's going to be easy. And then we've got a budget to work with, but no, it's not going to be that way, and it's a part of life that we have to go through as men sometimes, is because we are so driven by success, or we're driven by that. And sometimes we let that be an idol. The journey is where it's at. And it's okay to take a victory lap, but just one. Okay. Take one victory lap. You ring the bell, take a victory lap, go have your cigar, go to, get a big screen TV, but then what's next? Okay. And what I tell people is it's always should be what by when, because in the kingdom, God uses everybody in the kingdom, and He's used some dirty, rotten scoundrels and some amazing men. David had his flaws. Jacob definitely had his flaws. Yep. Abraham had his flaws, right? But they were remarkable, and they kept their focus on the and kept their plumb line and kept the true north where it had to be. And so, didn't mean they didn't have issues, and they did, and some were very insecure issues. So.
That's great.
Yeah.
Man, I love that. Okay. So, you climbed this big hill of success, sold your business and transitioned. Like, what was next for you? What's the big target, and what have you been chasing after, for the last, what's the big target for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you. I didn't really know, when I got out of the business for about a year, I didn't know and it was really cool because it was, I gave my life to Jesus, and then boom, sold my company. And it was like, had a radical encounter with the Lord and the Holy Spirit. And it was like Disney on ice, man, for like 90 days. It was like, I could like see around corners. I was like, this is so great. And it was. And then all of a sudden, I think somebody told the enemy that, hey, you got a big fish that just left the pond, man. And all of a sudden, all hell broke loose. And for the next 9 months, it was really hard, Jason. It was really, really hard. And what helped me is perseverance and sticking to it. And I kept showing up. And I was going to Watermark here in Dallas at the time. Todd Wagner mentored me, which was really cool. And he did a great job on-ramping me into Jesus, because I don't think I could have went from where I was at into the charismatic world. I had to, go into kind of evangelical world to get to where I needed to be, but which was really a blessing. But
do you mind telling us what was hard for you?
Yeah, I thought I had it all figured out, and then I sold the company, and I'm sitting around here thinking, what the hell am I going to do now?
Yeah.
And I didn't know, and it was scary for the first time. I was like, I didn't have, because in sales and insurance, it was all about numbers, right? It's all, putting, selling premium, selling deals, giving out big checks to my salespeople, that open up new offices, climb new heights, I had that. But then when I sold the company, I was like, okay, now what? I don't know. I mean, and here's the big thing that was really hard for me. Nobody was calling me.
Yeah.
And it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing when, you're the man, okay, everybody will call you. But as soon as all of a sudden, he's out, it's like, hey, is my phone on? Have I paid the bill? And it was kind of what the only thing that saved me was Jesus. It's true. It sounds like a cliche, but it's true, because I poured into Jesus. I poured into the Holy Spirit, and I poured in, and it was radical adjustment for me. And it's not like I was an evil doer by any stretch. I was, but I never knew Jesus was actually the Son of God until that moment. And so that was a big adjustment for me. And then all of a sudden, God puts me into this, these churches. And then next thing I know, I got front row seats with the senior pastor. Then the next thing I know, I'm, helping out, these people at this charismatic church, which freaked me out. I mean, because I come from an evangelical side over to the, to people speaking in tongues and rolling around and, and having a big time. It was like, whoa, what's all this about? So that, saying all that, it was quite the transition, and I don't regret any of it. It was all fascinating, and I learned, and I really enjoyed all of it. But it was a different time. It was, and I think, going through that first year, I had to go through that, sadly, and I didn't know. I was older, but I had to go through it, and so it wasn't easy. And then I wrote a book, and it wasn't the bestseller that I wanted it to be. I thought for sure that CNBC would call me up and have me get on TV and do it. And no, my mother bought a copy. I think that was it. And so I had to go through that. It's like, okay, all right, McIntyre, you're good, but you're not as good as you thought you were. So that was a realization too. And then so started coaching people, and then all of a sudden, I'm starting to hang out at Upper Room, which was really cool, and made a lot of friends. And I realized then, my dance card got really full with a lot of men wanted coaching and mentorship, which was great. And then they asked me to come on staff at the church, and I did not want to do that, and they asked me 3 times, and finally God says, you need to go over there. And so I did, which was a great experience. It was, and they're amazing. And I got to look behind the curtain, Jason, at how hard it is to be a pastor.
Yeah, honestly, I have a friend who just started a church, and they're doing great. And I always tell him, like, dude, the last thing I would do on this planet is start a church. It's so friggin' hard. People are so, listen, look at me, man. You guys are hard. People are hard, man. The expectations and then church politics too is never fun. It's horrible.
Amen.
But it's just like family, it's family. Yeah. It's all that stuff.
It's messy, and so, so we did that, and it was great. And I did my time and I got out of that. And then we started doing, we do this next level experience, which is really what we've been doing a lot for the last 8 years. And senior pastor helped me, told me, he said, you got to do this. Cause that's the way we used to train our sales reps without Jesus. But then we brought Jesus into it, and it's been pretty phenomenal. And then we started this TV show. We're doing a docuseries called MBA, McIntyre Business Accelerator, called The Accelerator, which I'm really excited about that. What's interesting about this though, Jason, I'm like, I'm out of my comfort zone, bro. And I think that's one of the keys, I think, for men, is to stay out of their comfort zone. Because that's where you grow. Nothing grows inside your comfort zone. And so many of us, we do like our rigor. We do like getting up in the morning, having our coffee or whatever, and, doing the things that keep us, keep our head screwed on straight. But we also need to stretch ourselves. And I believe God put us on this planet. We're all on this planet at a certain time for a reason. I don't believe it's rando. I believe he's got you there for a purpose, just like he had Jacob there for a purpose, Abraham for a purpose, David, I think there's purposes, and, Esther was there for a purpose. And so I think we have to steward that time. And I think sitting in our comfort zone is not the best time. Like I said, take a victory lap, enjoy a couple days in the comfort zone, and then what's next? So we started this docuseries, which is out of my comfort zone, but it's kind of exciting. So we love helping Christian business owners take their business to the next level. And one of the things Stacy and I, my wife and I, have discovered that there's a lot of businesses out there that need help. I want people to make a lot of money. I want them to be wealthy, and whatever that wealth looks like to them, it's different for everybody. But I get tired of the Christians walking around broke, Jason. I don't think God meant it to be that way. And I think, and Lance Wallnau, I'm sure, but he's the one that told me when I went and spoke at one of his deals, I don't know, 8-9 years ago. He said, McIntyre brings the secular secrets into the Christian world. And so that's what I started doing. And we've really enjoyed that. And I brought my daughter into it, and Stacy and I, my wife, 38 years, we're doing that. And it's pretty phenomenal to help people get their business where they want it to be and be profitable.
How do you do that?
Yeah. So we set up, we call it MBA, McIntyre Business Accelerator, and we bring them in. And one of the things that during my business, our years in the insurance business, is we amassed quite a few amazing professional attorneys, accountants, marketers, tech people, social media, and that most people wouldn't be able to get an audience with unless you spent, $500,000 a year with them. So we bring them in, and we say, look, we're going to have a 3-day. We bring them into our house for 3 days of really dismantling their business, finding out what's working, what's not working, and putting it back together and sending them back out and give them 12 months of coaching. And so we bring all these people in, and it's phenomenal. And we've taken companies that were, maybe at $1 million a year up to, $5 million a year. And every now and then we'll get a startup depending on what it looks like. But we do a 3-day, pretty strong, intensive about their business. And we share our secrets of success in making businesses work. Just basic things. Sometimes people don't know how to hire and fire people. There is a way to do it right, and stay within the boundaries of the kingdom and honor people well. Some people don't know how to borrow money. Some people don't know how to invest. Some people don't know how to take on debt because they got this Dave Ramsey thing in their mind that they can't ever have debt. Well, that's garbage. And we walk them through how to take. There is a way to use money as a fulcrum for your business and to expand it from, $500,000 to $5 million a year. So we do that. And then you need to have good attorneys. You need to have people that are good, that understand that's not just going to charge you a lot of money and leave you high and dry. Then you need to have good tax people and good marketing people and good, come up with some creative ideas. And during that period, we formulate a network. These are mostly successful people are wanting to get there. And so now they have a network and kind of a forum, if you will, of a mastermind that really works good.
That's awesome. What do you think the biggest mistake that business owners are making? What's the most common mistake?
They don't take action. Okay. Mm-hmm. They get comfortable and they don't take action, and they stay within their boundaries, and they're happy, but they're not happy, at the revenue they're in. So, and what happens is fear gets a hold of them. One of the things I asked them, what's your biggest fear? They say going broke. I said, okay, I've been broke twice. Okay. Didn't like it either time. Right. But going broke is the reason why I became wealthy. And if you're not willing to go all in, then don't even bother. I think Jesus said it best, if you're lukewarm, spit it out, either be all in or all out. And I think that's one of the biggest fears. And I think it's just because they have lack of confidence. And what we do at MBA is we bring confidence in with God, and we call it Godfidence, right? And so they can have this, and they have somebody. I've been there. I've done it. Do I have all the answers? Not by a stretch, but I've been there. I know what it's like, to wake up at 2:00 in the morning and trying to make payroll the next day. I get that. But I also know what it's like, to put a ton of money in the bank too, and have a bunch of people employed and benefit them. So what I think the biggest thing is the reason people fail, Jason, or not fail or never get there or just stay at mediocrity, is they're afraid to take the risk.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I could see that. Even in my own life, I could see that. It's always when I get up against that wall, that challenge, like sink or swim, that it becomes the biggest blessing. yeah, I was a couple years, no, this last year, in like a year ago almost. I was on my way to Taiwan, and my wife calls me, and she's like, "Hey, I was going to be in Taiwan for 8 days and speak 15 times in 5 days, translated 80-minute sessions, right? So I'm getting ready to go do this like mega trip." And she says, "Hey, we have $1,000 left in the bank. I just want to let you know, like, she's like, I'm not like freaking out about it, but," and I just started thinking like, God dang, man, I'm so freaking sick of having no money. I'm sick of having $1,000 in the bank constantly, and, but that started a season in my life where right there on the way to San Francisco, I called two friends who are, wealthy businessmen. And I just said, "Hey, I just want to let you guys know where I'm at." And they both said like, "Hey, if you need money or something." I said, "I don't need money. I want you to know like two things. I'm going to Taiwan. My wife isn't feeling super good because she was sick, and I'm getting ready to do this big trip. And so I don't want to just be on this trip carrying this burden alone. And two, like, I've got to make a plan. And I want the men in my life to know that I've got to move forward." And I called, when I got back home, I had my parents come over because my dad's really good. My dad and mom are really good with finances. They're stupidly good. And especially at like, bank statements and spreadsheets. And my dad's he's a good strategist too. My mom's really great at like, where did that penny go? I'm like, "Mom, it's a penny. I don't know where the penny went. Like, who cares where the penny went?" You can go buy, but she's great at that. And so it's humbling, right? Like, it was really humbling. My parents are at my house. I'm friggin' 43 years old, and they're looking through my bank statements. And my dad, after an hour, he goes, "Well, it's not that you're spending money. You guys don't have any money. Like, you're not wasting money. You don't have any." And he goes, "You're $2,000 short every single month. So you got to figure out how to make $2,000 more dollars." Once I could figure out the target.
Yep.
So I started to brainstorm with my dad. I was like, well, I can do some counseling appointments, and I've been a counselor 20 years and never charged anybody. And which is great. It's what I get paid to do at the church. And I oversee our transformation center. And so I said, "Well, Dad, I could do that." And once I started to go down that path, right? So I sold a package, I sold a month of counseling for X amount of dollars. Doesn't really matter. And because I called a friend who's this is how he's built his life, and he's a millionaire. I said, "Hey, what do you think I should do here?" He said, "I'll sell a package." So I did that. And then I started to realize, like, I don't want to do one-on-one counseling anymore. I've done it for 20 years. I'm tired of it. But my whole point is that started the process of me going, I know where I've been. I know where I want to go. I don't have it all mapped out, but I can't stay here. I have to just keep innovating and innovating and innovating. And it's fun because yesterday I text a friend of mine and set up an appointment for him to sit down with my wife and I, and we are light years beyond where we were 8 months ago.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is I'm continuing to remember. So for me, I do two things. I remember how painful it was to be in that spot, right? And also think through where I want to be in a year. And so I'm remembering, okay, if you slack off, if you don't do anything, then I just repeat that cycle.
Yeah.
But building stuff,
right?
But building stuff is challenging. It's hard. It's uncomfortable. It's risky. But that's where the vision, right? The pain and the vision. I got this pain pushing me and this vision pulling me. And so that honestly, like, that's what I've been doing recently. And with my wife and I, we built a podcast this year. We hit 200,000 downloads this year, which was awesome. And that's our investment, right? I'm looking at that like 5 years from now, I'll be able to monetize that and I'll be, so anyways, just opening it up for guys. Like, for me, this is practically like what this has looked like in my life is in becoming honestly, like becoming the CEO of my life, like becoming somebody who's, I didn't really think like that a lot because I grew up in the church world and I'm a pastor and a counselor. And, I think people and I think, helping people, but I didn't really think a lot about, financial, like I didn't really think about wealth and prosperity much.
Mm-hmm.
And not that I thought that it was bad, because I didn't. I just thought, like that's whatever, it's just going to take care of itself, but it doesn't. It doesn't. I've been 20 years, I've been 20 years at Bethel this year, and I have $25,000 in my retirement. You know what I mean? Like,
Well,
I'm,
what you're saying, Jason, is platinum. Okay. And just for you listeners, I hear it. Because what happened is you had this moment that your wife called you and, listen, I can see the bottom of the well, and it's like, I gotta get, I don't like this feeling. And you didn't like that feeling either. You're going over to do all these speeches. You don't want to carry on that luggage, man, because then now you're hearing, the enemy's talking to you and doing all this stuff. So what you, and you sitting down there with your mom and dad and going through that, I love the vulnerability in that, bro. That's really vulnerable, right? There's a lot of guys that wouldn't do that. And a lot of guys that are listening out there, this is how you got to bring things to the light, because nothing gets done in the dark except for evil things. Okay. You've got to bring things to the light, and you bringing it to your mom and dad because you trust them, you love them. Your dad and they're not going to judge you for doing this. They're going to just come and give you wisdom. And then boom, okay, how can I do this? And you sought wisdom from this guy that made money, sell a package. So then you realize you don't want to do that. So you're going to do this, and you start BraveCo. That's entrepreneurship, and that's seeking wisdom. Iron sharpens iron. And listen, nobody likes to get kicked in the teeth. And you remember when you do get kicked in the teeth, man, it hurts like heck. And so you say, hey, I'm going to avoid that road where I got kicked in the teeth at all costs, and whatever that looks like. And so what I love that you're doing is you're pouring in to your future, and you're pouring into this. And look, you're still young, bro. You are. I know it doesn't seem that way, but you are. And, I know there's people out there that might be 35 years old. Like, oh man, I feel old. Don't be stupid. You're not old. Yeah. Okay. This is 2024. Your life expectancy, if you get to 35, is 90. Okay. Yeah. So you're good. And if you're out there listening and you're 60, your life expectancy is like 94. Okay. So you made it to 60 without dropping dead. So you're doing really good. So these are important things. And what you're saying, as men, we want to be the provider. Nothing wrong with that. It's a lot of pressure sometimes to be the provider, right? Women have their things. Us men some of us have that provider syndrome, right? Which I think God gives us that, because we are the stronger of the sex, and we want to protect, provide, and we're a patriot. So, if it hits the fan, we're going to the front line with our guns and taking care of business, right? That's how God made us to be. And that's what we're going to do. And so that's a lot of responsibility. And so with that, we need to have, and you sought wisdom in that, but you also said, I just got some, I just got an RPG on my way to Taiwan, and I don't want that again. So I just think that's brilliant that you recognize that, bro.
Yeah. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. It's just, everyone thinks that somebody else is in a completely different boat as them. And that's the truth. I've been doing this for such a long time. And the truth is that we're not, all of us guys are really in a very similar boat. And I grew up in a great home, and I got a great dad. I got lots of spiritual fathers, and I still have to wake up every single day and be a man, and face my future with courage and do things that I don't friggin' want to do. And that's, there are no day offs and no timeouts, it's just, you have to do it every single day. You got to show up. But the nice thing, right? The nice thing is not doing it alone. And we talk about that a ton here. But it really is. That's the difference. And so
it is.
Yeah.
And not only showing up, Jason, but when you show up, 90% of success in life is just showing up, right? Just being there, even when you don't want to be there at 4:00 in the morning for somebody that's dying, just being there, right?
Yeah.
Or being that, that new business, or go making that sales call, or getting on the road and being away from your family for 5 days. Nobody wants to do that, but this is what you do. 90% of success is showing up, but the other 10% to put you over the top, to put you over the hump, is once you show up, is to be seen, right? Make a difference. Be bold in Christ. Step out of your comfort zone and say, okay, let's make this happen. And listen, you might fall flat, do a face plant, but that's where life is. Yeah, that's where it's at. And, the only way I became successful is through failure. That's it.
Man, I love that. Michael, you're a great man. And I just appreciate you coming on here so much, man, and pouring out your life to everyone and just inspiring us with this. So thank you so much.
Oh my
I
gosh,
really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for starting BraveCo, man. I've been listening to you, and I heard your son yesterday on there, and you guys sound so much alike. It's really cool. And it's really cool what you guys are doing out there, bro. And thank you for inviting me on. We're just honored to be here.
Absolutely. BraveCo men, that's it for this week's podcast. I'm going to pray for us real quick. Father, I thank you, Lord, for each man. God, I thank you that you are our leader. Lord, you're the author. You're the finisher, God. And Lord, I just ask that you would give every man wisdom on how to lead his life, how to step up to these challenges, Lord, how to find vision in the midst of a hard time, Lord, how to grow in faith in you, Lord. Would you come and be our Father and guide us and lead us? Amen. All right, man. Hopefully you enjoyed this week's podcast. We will see you next week on the BraveCo podcast. Hey guys, thanks so much for listening to the BraveCo podcast. If you like this podcast, would you please rate it, review it, leave us a great comment. And if you like this episode in particular, share it with your friends and family. That helps us to spread the word. Guys, stay brave. We'll see you next week.